Hello, I'm attorney Louis Haskell, and I'm making this video because I had a client come in today, and he was a little distraught because he had heard that President Trump had already deported 4,000 Laotians. I told him I didn't believe that was true, but that I would look into it for him. And what I found was this article. Says that over 4,800 Lao nationals set to face deportation from the United States. And this article is in the Laotian Times. While it is true, as the article states, that there are 4,850 Lao individuals who have final orders of removal on their heads. That is a very different thing from actually removing them. In fact, it was one of the interesting things about the Borders Our Homeland Speaks that there are, here it says over 1.4 million individuals. I think I heard Homeland say 1.3 million, but whatever, a lot of people with final deportation orders. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're low-hanging fruit. Because, for example, with Laos, we don't have a memorandum of understanding. Laos has not agreed to take back, frankly, anyone. And so without a memorandum of understanding, these 4,850 people are okay for now. And I say for now because Trump does have a talent for getting people to take back some of their citizens, some of their nationals. For example, until a week or two ago, Venezuela was not taking anybody back, and apparently now they are. We have a strange situation with Cambodia where we had an MOU, but they really weren't taking people. And then during the last Trump administration, in fact, it actually started late in the Obama administration, they started taking some and then they stopped or at least slowed it down a lot. So I do worry a lot about what's going to be going on in terms of deportation from that community. In fact, I remember in Trump 1.0, he did manage to deport some Vietnamese, notwithstanding the fact that we had no MOU with Vietnam, at least not one that enabled him to deport refugees, and yet he was able to deport refugees. So what I would say to anybody with a final order removal on their heads, well, they probably should have done it a long time ago, but now's a good time to go see an immigration lawyer, such as myself, but an immigration lawyer, to talk about what options that they may have. And the fact that they spoke to someone, a few years ago, even the fact that they spoke to me a few years ago, wouldn't really foreclose the necessity of or the benefits of doing this again. For example, a lot has changed. It's not so much that it's changed, it's that there's been a lot of kind of interesting decisions in the courts in the last few years in the area of what we call crimmigration, the intersection of criminal law and immigration law. So, for example, right now, my office has a case which we're fighting in the immigration court in which we're saying that the Massachusetts definition of cocaine is overbroad, and thus a conviction on a Massachusetts cocaine statute is not a grounds to deport a lawful permanent resident. And we're making this argument based on Second Circuit Court of Appeals decision, which held that an identical definition of cocaine in New York State cannot be used as grounds for removal, as grounds for deportation of an LPR, that the definition is overbroad. So we have a lot going on in terms of whether or not state crimes may or may not give rise to a federal deportation order or a federal sanction. We still have in Massachusetts, especially very broad, very generous decisions in the Padilla space, the ineffective assistance of counsel space, the failure to advise a person as to the immigration consequences of a plea. And in fact, I had a successful argument not so long ago. Well, I brought it forward as a Padilla case that actually put in a section on the judge's colloquy. Actually, when I was discussing with this one with the ADA, who basically agreed not to oppose my Padilla motion, they indicated that the real reason they weren't fighting me was not so much my ineffective assistance argument, which I thought was a winner, but on my judge's colloquy motion argument. And I think that the judge did give a strange immigration warning to my client. And they did not want me making law about that. But in any event, I got his conviction vacated and final order of removal vacated. So there's a lot of things that can be done. Now, it's interesting because what really inspired me to make this video, though, is I already posted that on my personal Facebook page. But in any event, but somebody commented about, Trump wanting to detain people, and especially wanting to detain people abroad. And especially in the context of Laotians, it occurred to me that since we don't have a memorandum of understanding with Laos, since there is no reasonable likelihood of being able to remove someone to Laos in the absence of something happening, I would suggest bringing a writ of habeas corpus immediately for a Lao person who is detained on an old final order of removal. Because frankly, I could see a federal judge saying that detaining a Lao person with no reasonable likelihood of removing them, but just to be harassing or trying to get them to self-deport or whatever, is merely punitive and not part of the orderly administration of the removal process. And so while the federal courts will usually give ICE 6 months to try to remove somebody from the country, I could see at least some federal judges saying, something, you can't hold them at all, especially on an old order. I mean, again, if somebody were to have a recent arrest or recent deportation order or whatnot, I would see that differently. But most of these 4,850 people committed crimes in the 90s, got their deportation orders 10 or 20 years ago, some cases 30 years ago. And I don't see a federal judge being too sympathetic to ICE detaining these people at all, and especially, sending them to Guantanamo Bay or Colombia or El Salvador or something like that. But frankly, I don't think they'd be so willing to have them sent to Bristol County. So that's probably another reason, is just to make sure that you have your ducks in a row in case something bad happens. Certainly, a Hague would be available in 6 months when they're not able to get you out, but it may be available quicker. And as I'm sitting here recording this, I'm thinking about something else I read today, where some folks who have been living in the United States for a very long time and did not have removal orders, but had entered the country by walking over the border, they're what in immigration call EWIs, entered without inspection. Apparently, they had good defenses to their removal, but were picked up by ICE, and the next thing you know, they're back in their home countries. And we suspect that they signed the form, agreeing to deportation because they didn't want to sit in ICE detention for a long time, but may not have realized that they had good defenses. In both these cases that I read about, they had U.S. citizen children. In one case, a U.S. citizen wife. In one case, they'd been here for 25 years. In that case, 35 years. I mean, these were pretty defensible cases. So again, it might behoove for people who don't have removal orders, but are afraid that they may have one, and who are afraid that ICE may be coming to get them. Those folks as well may want to come in and talk just to see what their options are. So we're living in interesting times. As I make this video, we're at the start of the 4th week. Today is the 3-week anniversary of the Trump presidency. And so it's pretty wild that so much has happened and the world has changed so much in such a short period of time. Basically, it just, requires that all of us be vigilant and diligent and doing our best to, number one, keep abreast of what's really happening, because there are rumors flying everywhere. And frankly, a lot of these rumors are being started by the administration itself. I mean, this idea of filling the immigrant community with terror, trembling, panic, and fear is exactly the goal here. So number one is just trying to keep abreast of what's really happening and trying to stay in front of it and figuring out what the options are if the worst does come about. And that would require, I think, a fair amount of consultation with those of us who are in the system, who know the ins and outs and have been involved in it for a long time. So as I say, if we're here, if we can be of assistance, please don't hesitate to contact us. And until then, be safe and be strong. Thank you.